As healthcare workers working with children and infants, we know that sleep can be a massive problem for parents. Now, we know that there is good information out there, but we also know that there is bad information or even potentially harmful information out there that parents can get hold of when it comes to infant and child sleep. So, to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, we have called on Jolandi Becker, who is a sleep consultant from Goodnight, to be able to help us myth bust when it comes to sleep in children. Okay, so everybody, thank you very, very much for joining us here this evening. I'm just going to do a little bit of an intro to Jolandi so you know who we're talking about and you know why we got Jolandi, because when we talk about things, you know that we at the Pediatric Network, the idea is to be as evidence-based as possible. So we want to go to the right people and we want to get the right information, which is why we go to people like Jolandi. So Jolandi Becker is the owner and managing director of Goodnight. She has personally assisted with over 700 families with sleep issues, and Goodnight, the company, has assisted with over 6,500 families. She's the African Regional Director for the Association of Professional Sleep Consultants. As I say, we only get the best here. And Goodnight is also currently part of a study, which is always fascinating to us, with the University of Pretoria, to study the effects of sleep training on the emotional well-being of parents. And I think anyone who works in this field will understand that parents take a beating when there is problems with sleep with infants. So Jolandi, thank you so much for spending your evening with us.
Yes, no, it's really exciting. It's like you said, in the end of the day, I think it's nice to have a well-rounded kind of way of thinking. Even with us, we like to, that's why I joined this network, is to kind of broaden the field and know what to look out for and when to refer. Always staying within your scope, but at least being able to identify certain things makes it so much easier for all of us to, know where to go to and who to go to, and know that people also know what they're talking about.
Absolutely, because it's one of those fields where there are a lot of people that work in it. There's a lot of myth that is around it. There's a lot of my auntie says this and my next door neighbor says you should do this, and you get these ideas from all over the shop. But there is evidence and there is stuff that we should follow for the benefit of the parents, for the benefit of the child, and for the benefit of everyone sort of moving forward.
Definitely.
So, first thing I'd like to talk to you about before we start myth busting, which is what we're here for. And guys, remember, there is a chat box on the side. I'm aware of the chat box. I'm looking at it right now. So if anything comes up, please, you are welcome. That's how the network works. But the first thing is, let's just talk about, if we're talking about our little ones, let's talk about normal sleep. What constitutes normal sleep?
So it depends definitely on the age of the child. Obviously, for a newborn, anything is possible. I always say the only consistent thing when it comes to a newborn, this is now obviously 0 to 3 months, is the only consistent thing with a newborn is inconsistency. And it's very normal that they're going to be sleeping for 10 minutes one day and you're going to do exactly the same thing the next day and they're going to sleep for 3 hours. Their tummies are still very tiny, so they are going to need a feed still at night, probably more than one feed, probably more like 3 or 4 feeds at night. So that is normal sleep for them. That's not abnormal. When it comes to good sleep and sleeping through the night, for me, that means you're sleeping from 7 till 6 in the morning without having someone needing to assist you. What I mean by that is that I can be blunt here. I don't have to talk mom talk here.
Yeah.
Because we all work with patients and clients and whatever, is that the reality is children wake up. People wake up during sleep at night. We wake up 4 to 5 times a night, and babies and children wake up 13 to 16 times a night. The sleeping through part is actually consolidating those sleep cycles without having intervention externally. And that's where the change comes in. So they do wake up, they just need to go back to sleep again on their own, like what we do as adults.
Well, that's a very interesting thing, because people talk about sleeping through, but that's not the case, because we are linking sleep cycles. And it's, can they internally link those cycles by themselves? Because even we as adults are not sleeping through, we're going through these cycles all the time. We
through
can just
these cycles, light sleep and deep sleep and light sleep. And like I said, we wake up 4 to 5 times a night. And if you have a crappy pillow, or if your husband is away for work, you're going to wake up because your brain is going to realize it's different than what it normally is. And that's exactly the same for children. If they fall asleep in a certain way and something happens that changes, they are going to wake up and they're going to need external intervention to fall asleep again if they don't know how to link those sleep cycles at night. So this happens, linking of sleep cycles can happen from 3 to, let's rather say 12 to 16 weeks. It can happen where they start forming sleep cycles and melatonin is already in their body, which is also obviously important for sleep. But actually then linking all the sleep cycles throughout the night without a feed, that's a whole different story. I always say a healthy 9-month-old does not require, I'm not going to, anything under 9 months, if the baby does it, woohoo, it's a bonus, but that's not the goal. They need to naturally start stretching it out because you don't know. You can't ask a 9-month-old, hey, are you hungry at night? They're not going to.
So, and I suppose this one of the most important things when we work with people in this situation is to explain to them what to expect, because I think society has, and social media and all sorts, has given us this weird expectation to go, as your baby arrives, it's supposed to sleep through the night, and there's so, I remember one time specifically where I had a mom come in with, like, I think it was like a 6 or 7 week old baby, explaining to me how wonderful it is that the baby sleeps through 8 hours, but it turns out the child is malnourished because they can't actually wake up. They don't have enough power to actually like get up, and their body's doing this calculation that goes, it's actually easier just to stay asleep than it is to get up because they have feeding issues, you know. So it's weird that Western society moves towards this, like, it's better for longer sleep. It's a weird connection that we
obviously there does come a time where it does become more important that they are sleeping these long stretches at night. But it's always that balance. Once again, they technically are always waking up at night. It's consolidating those sleep cycles at night. And it's more about when are they ready to drop the feed at night. And like I said, before 9 months, that's it. After 9 months, it is. Most healthy 9-month-old babies can stretch through the night from 7 till 6 the next morning without a feed. That doesn't mean they're not waking up. They're still waking up. But can go without external intervention, and the only external intervention that's needed after basically 3-4 months is feeding your child. The rest they should be able to do on their own. Obviously also changing a diaper they can't do, and they can't cuddle themselves. So
sure, but that's really, really good, because that just, I think, well, first of all, takes pressure off parents to go, look, under 9 months some can, and that's okay, but it's not a requirement, and there's nothing wrong with your child that's not happening under that age.
I mean, I had a mom, a 12-week with a 12-week-old the other day telling me, no, her baby's waking up at 1 still and at 3, and I'm like, that's pretty good for a 12. That's, I wish I had that. So it's a lot about knowing what is normal and what is not normal with regards to sleep.
Okay, so that's our first kind of go-to thing, is to understand sleep architecture works a certain way inside children. It then works a different way inside adults, and maybe that's kind of like the head crunch that we have with each other, because kids are sleeping one way. It's really disturbing to an adult to have that consistent waking for us, and it's difficult.
And it's a very interesting kind of thing to have that adult versus child kind of differences between sleep. So the first thing to understand when we talk about children's sleep and adult sleep is that adults need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, whereas babies and children need, up until the age of 5, they need 11 to 12 hours of sleep at night. That's obviously not, once again, not on end necessarily. They might still need a feed, but they do need 11 to 12 hours of sleep. So just from that, you can already say that they're obviously going to have more sleep cycles than us because they have longer sleep. The other big difference is also that our sleep cycles are an hour and a half, and a baby's sleep cycle is about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Once again, from that, because their sleep cycles are shorter, you can make the calculation that they actually have more sleep cycles than what we have. We move between 4 and 5 sleep cycles, and they move between 13 and 16 sleep cycles. And because their sleep cycles are also shorter, that's why we often feel a lot more tired, because they're cutting our sleep cycles in half all the time, but they're, actually finishing.
Okay.
Yes. And also,
Yes.
obviously, a period of 6 months. If you remember when you were 21 and you went to bed at 3, at 6 you were still okay.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot more stamina still.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that's one of the best things about lockdown, man. 8 o'clock, I'm in bed. Nothing else to do. My sleep has improved. And, well, now it's improved. The first month, I think I had about 16 separate sleep cycles, and everyone ended up with me coming out of it going, ah. So yeah, I think I had that kind of understanding. But yeah, we're all back to normal. So understanding normal sleep really gives us a lovely framework from which to start myth busting now, because that's the whole idea for tonight. We want to take some of those things that people kind of take for granted, that, oh, this is how it works, and kind of go, hang on a second, maybe that's not exactly what's going on. So the first one that we talked about was, and I've come across this a lot, where people come into the office and they go, look, you know what, he's just a bad sleeper. My child is just a bad sleeper, and I've been told that it's going to pass. So I'm just kind of gritting my teeth and I'm bearing with it, and I'm just going to move forward.
And that's a very big, it's like a two line, because there's also an add-on to that where they're like, oh, my husband was also a bad sleeper when he was a child. That's what my mother-in-law always tells me, so it's probably genetic. So with that, it is two sides to it, in the sense of that, first of all, sleep is very natural, and the human body is built for sleep because it's something that we do for a significant part, or we're supposed to do for a significant part of our day and our life. So our bodies are built for sleep. So bad sleep, or a child who doesn't sleep well, is kind of going against that natural thing, and it's often external interventions that have caused them not to sleep. Often parents try so hard to get their child to sleep that has the opposite effect.
Okay. So a lot of the time we kind of go, it's more of actually going like, my child's a bad sleeper is the sentence that comes out, but it's more of a fact that, like, it could be that the environment that my child attempts to sleep in isn't great.
I mean, there's lots of things. Obviously, we call these the building blocks of sleep. So environment is a big one, and I think all parents now are stalking their children, seeing them 24/7, looking at them while they're moving around. And babies spend like a third of the night in light sleep and REM active sleep. And unlike us as adults, they don't have the hormone to paralyze their muscles while they're sleeping, so they're quite active in their sleep. So that activeness, they see them, oh, they're completely awake, and they even opened up their eyes. And that activeness, they think then their child is waking up, and they try to then get their child back to sleep, whereas they should have probably just left them. And they wouldn't even have noticed that if they didn't have the CCTV camera on them, stalking them and looking at them all the time. And like I just said, they spend a third of their time they spend in light sleep, and they often open up their eyes while they're sleeping. So if there's a light, instead of going, oh, my eyes are still closed, and continue to sleep, they're like, oh, lights, party time, it's awake time. And then they want to go again, like playing going on. And then they are going to completely wake up. So there's these environmental factors, and like I mentioned as well, like sleep associations, we call them. You want to create positive sleep associations that your baby can use independently of you, like a taglet or a lovey or something like that. Whereas if you've got external factors like a bottle or a boob, then they're going to need that bottle or boob to link the sleep cycles again, if they wake up at night.
Am I right in saying, because I think I read this somewhere, or I got told it somewhere, that if you have something that is a sleep association, so let's take a tablet as a good example,
Yes.
that should only be introduced at sleep time. Because if
Yes.
you start introducing it at other times, that's when you start linking it up to all sorts of other things. So it has to be quite, that's why a bottle doesn't particularly work, or like a breast doesn't work, because it's part of your other part of the day.
And feeding and sleeping is never a good combination, you know. The only people who eat and sleep are people you take out of the bed with a crane. It's not a healthy sleep. uh, so you
Sure.
want to create those positive sleep associations, and that's definitely you want to have those only at bedtime. And same with the dummy. If you're introducing it as a sleep association, keep it for bedtime, not shutting up your baby all the time and giving it all the time, because that's also when the dummy becomes a problem, is when you're shutting them up all the time, and not actually just giving it for sleep, and creating those sleep associations and feeding associations and playing associations. So you want to create those signals for your child, definitely.
Yeah. When did those start to, what kind of age roundabout did those kind of associations start being made?
And it actually does start around 3 months already,
Yeah.
but full on really you see the attachment only from around 6 months, and it's only then safe to use certain sleep association. Obviously, you can't if your baby has a big blanket. That's why I often say to parents use a taglet or something small, because you do want something that's safe. You don't want your baby to leave them with something that's going to suffocate them.
Mm.
So you need to keep those safe sleep things also in mind. And that's why often with small babies, I would say while you're cuddling and holding them, you're going to have the sleep association. But if it's a 3 month old, you're going to put them down, maybe next to them, the taglet, not on them, not on their face. But from 6 months, you can start putting it a little bit closer to them, because then they can start pulling it off.
Okay.
That's why you should also not have a big blanket or the stuffed toy that's dangerous, something like that, also not as a sleep association. Okay. But in the end, like I said, is your child going to grow out of it? If you keep those things in place, if you keep all those, it's not going to change, you know. That's always that age-old saying of what is insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's the same thing. If you're going to do the same thing, it's not going to change. But on that same note, some parents try way too many things, and then they're not trying hard enough with the same thing, so they don't even know if it works or not. So it's also the other side of that, of course.
I'll tell you, such a weird thing that happened with me is that we had with my son, and he still has it. His bear was the association. That was the sleep association. The weirdest thing is that it had the same effect on me, because when I took it out, I started getting super slow, and I started getting a bit quieter. And it's weird, like the association of that thing, be it a taglet or a bear or whatever, it has this association because it's sleep associated. And just because you're the adult, well, I'm still trying to get there, but just because you're the one in charge, it had exactly the same effect on me. And I started going slower with him, and I would talk slow because now the association was out. So now it was sleep time for everyone. So I don't know if that happens to other people, but that was
also, of
me.
course, it's a more concrete thing for them to process their emotions. Obviously, emotions are very abstract things, and children don't know. You know, they like feeling things. You know, that's why in the beginning they put stuff in their mouth and all those things. They like the concrete feeder things, and I think that just helps them to process that feeling of going from year to year, like physically. Like they often like rub it, like there's my daughter rubs her taglet like that, or they put it in their mouth or things like that, to just like physically process that emotion of calming and getting there.
Well, okay. That makes all the sense in the world. So that's a really good one. So children aren't. I think just to bust that myth completely, like children aren't inherently bad sleepers. There's
No.
something around them that's not, like they are designed to have a lot of sleep.
For me, the only time there's a red flag with sleeping, if someone phones me and they say the kiddo is waking up 3 or 4 times, I'm not worried at all. Even 8 times, I'm not worried at all, because there are some sleep cycles that child is linking. So that are able to do it. There's nothing that's medically wrong with that child. If a mom phones me and she tells me her child is waking up 13 to 14 times, then I'm starting to wonder a little bit, because that child cannot link any sleep cycles. It doesn't mean there is something medically wrong or something that is wrong with their sleeping, but the chances are a lot higher that there is going to be something wrong with that child if they are not linking any of the cycles. And that's why some children actually, just sleep through. Why does it happen? Some moms just have it where their child just sleeps through from the start. Why? It's because sleep is natural. They're built for sleep. And bad sleepers are made, not born.
Okay, I get you. So that myth thoroughly busted. I like it. Okay, let's go on to our second one. So it doesn't matter when my child sleeps. He's getting to sleep at some stage, so it's going to be fine, and it doesn't matter. And that's almost like a we've got to the point now where like, okay, oh my God, he's just gone to sleep. Just let's leave. And then whenever that happens, we kind of go, okay, we just take. It's almost like opportunistic, right?
Yeah. With that, definitely. I mean, in the reality is that they need 11 to 12 hours of sleep at night. That's the first thing. So if your child is even just going to bed at 8 and waking up at 6, it means they're losing 1 hour of sleep every single day. That's 7 hours of sleep over a week. That's a lot of sleep that's missing, and that's accumulating over time. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So that's the first thing is that they do need a certain amount of sleep at night. Okay. When that happens is okay in some ways, so you can have a little bit of flexibility. You get like night owls, people who go to bed a little bit later. So it is okay, but it has to be within a window. Because also obviously 11 to 12 hours of sleep is an average, just like 7 to 8. But there are people who can get away with a little bit less sleep. So what I mean by that is that you cannot have your child going to bed at 8 and they're waking up at 5. Because that means they're losing an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening and in the morning. So that's 2 hours of sleep in that sleep cycle. So that's not great. But if your child is falling asleep at 10 and they're waking up at 9, you could in some way say it's okay because they are getting the 11 to 12 hours of sleep at night. But now a whole different thing comes into play. Our natural circadian rhythm. Okay, when the sun comes up and when the sun goes down, has a giant influence on that circadian rhythm. So then we don't talk about quantity sleep anymore, but we talk about quality sleep. And that child is not getting the quality sleep that they're getting because they are shifting. It's like shift workers or pilots. There's lots of research with regards to what effect that has on their sleep. Because even though they're getting the amount of sleep that they need, the quality of sleep is not great. Because the time their circadian rhythm, the start of production of melatonin, and in the beginning of the night, you first go into light sleep, then deep sleep, light sleep, that has an effect, and that has to happen at a certain time. And if you miss that big frame, that whole thing shifts, and not with that part, you start in the middle of your sleep. So the important sleep that's laying down the memory and all those things is not happening because you skipped that part of your sleep. Yeah. Even though technically it was already happening. You were just not doing it. So it does have, you can't have a too late bedtime, even if you want to. I don't think anyone wants their child to go to bed at 10. The only bedtime. But that's what I'm saying. It's not just about when they sleep and how they sleep. It's also about the quality of sleep. It's just like with naps. They need a certain amount of naps, but you want it to be quality naps. Not all the time. Of course, naps on the go is okay every now and then. But you can't have all the naps on the go. All the naps, because the quality of the sleep is not as good as what your child would have had in a cot, in a quieter environment.
Okay, I like that. I really do like that because it comes down to just, about the law, everything of working with children. Yes, quantity is fine, but it's quality and that's the same thing as milestones. It's not the quantity of how fast and how well they get hold of that. And I think sleep is maybe one of those things that's kind of pushed to the sideline because it's really fancy to crawl and then it's fancy to walk, but it's so important to sleep correctly because that's where you solidify these things, that's where you create connections, that's where everything gets together, and then we can move forward. So I really like that idea of being quality sleep.
Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of ways to fake sleep. And I mean, adults see that as well, where they're drinking alcohol and you pass out and you're sleeping, but then the next morning you feel tired. That is, you're getting the hours you're actually thinking you're getting, but the quality of your sleep is not great. It's a similar thing.
Okay. I thought you were going to say faking sleep, like when the dad hears the baby crying, and we do that really, and then you start to play soccer with each other at the end of the bed, and you start to kick. Dads can do a lot of kicking.
I'm impressed that you actually woke up. My husband would wake up the next morning and he's like, "Oh, that was a good night," and I'm like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. No, I got completely bullied into it because I would get the like, aren't you supposed to be good with babies? Yeah, and I'm sure Nikki will attest to that as well. Okay, so now let's get on to our third myth. So, breastfeeding, if it works for you and everything works wonderfully and you go down the breastfeeding route, it means you're now not going to get any sleep. And it means that your sleep is going to suffer because you've decided to breastfeed.
That's I personally can say that is not the truth. I breastfed both my children way beyond 1 year. The first one doesn't count. That was before I did this, before I knew better. But my daughter slept through from 4 months and I was breastfeeding her exclusively, no solids, nothing, anything. She was only on breast milk. So personally, I know this is not the case. She did it without it. And the reason is that people often, I think with breastfeeding, that moms feel this pressure because they don't know how much milk the baby's drinking. And, it's all about the quantity, whereas maybe they should just relax and trust the fact that their baby is growing and gaining weight and that they're healthy. Not that they shouldn't worry about how much milk there, but because of the formula frenzy, and there's not a good or a bad way of feeding your baby, but there is, with formula, this is how much my baby is drinking. And with breastfeeding, that's not the case. And then often moms, choose to, not do it because they feel like, if they make that compromise. So, but also with breastfeeding on the other hand as well, is that definitely, first of all, your baby can sleep through. The waking up, I have very seldom had it as a sleep consultant where that was the factor that changed things, that the baby, the only time I can think of where breastfeeding actually influenced the sleep was when the mom seriously had a milk production problem and she wasn't producing enough milk. But that you could see from the start, from the get-go, that the baby was underweight and everything. And then I told the mom she first needs to sort out the nutrition before we can work on the sleep, because it's the foundation of it. You can't, a hungry baby is going to wake up. Okay. So that's the only time. And with breastfeeding, there's also phases that you go through. At around 6 months, the milk starts kind of coming in, or not coming in, settling a little bit. It's not so overly produced anymore. Should probably stop pointing at my breast while I'm talking about breastfeeding.
How it goes. It's how it goes. It's all day long.
Anyway. But with the breastfeeding, when the milk starts settling around 6 months also, moms tend to want to, stop, because they think the production went down, but it's actually just becoming around. So those are the kind of times where it's small babies where breastfeeding is an issue, then around 6 months again, and a big one is beyond 12 months, where moms then, if a mom beyond 12 months is still breastfeeding and it's the problem while her child is still waking up, I always say to moms, if you're waking up 3 to 4 times beyond 12 months feeding your child, I mean, beyond 12 months, no baby needs milk anymore at night, unless they're severely underweight or premature or something like that.
Yeah.
But a healthy baby does not need milk at night beyond 12 months, probably earlier. But for those moms, if they then are feeding still at night, it's a very big struggle, because now they're saying, okay, the only way that my child is now going to sleep through is if I stop breastfeeding. And that too is a lie. It's just you have to feed the milk feed at an appropriate time. And I call it bringing the bond back, because if you're feeding 3 to 4 times a night, it's not nice anymore. It's work. And that bonding thing that's part of breastfeeding is no longer there. And you want to bring the bond back. And if you move the breastfeeding to an appropriate time where you're properly feeding your baby before you have your bedtime routine and everything, and then you have your bedtime routine and your baby falls asleep on their own, then they have that feeding and sleeping association, and then they're not going to wake up at night. And then those times you are still breastfeeding during the day, it's going to be so much nicer because you're actually spending time with your child. And bonding with it, not doing it 10 times at night.
Just give it a sec.
Am I freezing?
Checking my connection.
I'm still there.
I think the connection may have let us down there. I'm just going to kill the camera for a sec.
Can you still hear me?
See if we can get the audio back.
Hello? Can you hear me?
There we go. You're back again. Good.
Okay.
Sorry. You kicked out a little there.
Okay. Oh, see, I think it was your problem. People could hear me.
Yeah. More likely my problem. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just putting my...
Good, there we are.
No, now I'm upside down. Sorry. You can't put a tablet upside down, apparently. Sorry, I have to put it on charge before it runs out.
No.
Anyway, so like I said, when it's beyond a certain age, then you want, like I said, the bond to come back. So it's just about moving the breastfeeding to an appropriate, and I never say we want to remove feeds. We want to remove cuddles. We just want to move it to a place where it's appropriate. You want to cuddle when your child is awake. You want to feed when it's feeding time and they're awake, not when they're supposed to be sleeping. And that's kind of the key of change with regards to that. But definitely, personally, no, I am a big ambassador. And if a mom tells me she wants to stop feeding, then I say, let's first get your child to sleep, get that feeding at an appropriate time. And if you still want to stop, then you stop. But let's not make it a forced decision. I want you to do it because you feel it's time, not because you feel that you're forced into it.
Okay, I love that. I mean, I'm a big reader of James McKenna, where he talks about breast sleeping, where the whole idea is that we are night feeders, and that's the natural progression of how it's supposed to work. And yes, there is a little bit more involved there, but it seems to work. It seems to work well with mom sleep and that kind of thing, until it goes over that line, like you were saying there. And the moment it becomes work, then all the good side leaves.
And definitely, like with small babies, when it's especially like newborns, I will tell the mom, you need to sleep as close to your baby as possible, because it just makes your sleep so much better if you're like literally only have to put them on and then put them back again. Whereas if you have to walk all the way to their room and come back again, you're going to struggle to fall asleep, and by the time you sleep again, you have to go again. So all these things are also obviously needs to be age appropriate when you're talking about when you're doing right.
Absolutely so. Okay, so those are 3 fantastic myths that we have gotten rid of there. I do want to ask you though, so with us, and I mean on the pediatric network, we have people on the spectrum from chiropractors to osteopaths to physios GPs, we have a few peds on here, we have nurses, we have and all of us are working in the realm of infants, and all of us are going to come up against the sleep story. For us, when do we refer to a sleep consultant? When do we say, look, I think that you need to have a sleep consultant as part of your team?
When it becomes like, like when the first time a parent tells you something, when it becomes more questions, more than just a one answer question, and you need to dig a little bit more. Certain things like, obviously, is like, if you talk about environmental things, these are definitely things that everyone should know, and they should know that, first of all, safe sleeping is important. The light, put off the light, make it as dark as possible at night and during the day. With toddlers, obviously, and older children, if they are afraid, you can use a night light. But also, the cot needs to be clear, and it's a sleeping area, not a playing area. Nutritionally, especially when we talk about pediatricians, they probably know more than me about nutrition. I look for red flags with regards to nutrition, and I refer out. But we all know that, like I said, beyond 12 months, any milk feeds at night is doing more bad than what it's doing good. So if the baby is feeding more than that, it's not just going to be like, oh, stop feeding at night. Say that to the mom. And if the next time she says she's still feeding 2 times or 3 times a night, then it's probably time to refer out. But if it's something where you can just tell them, hey, try to just put the light off while your child is sleeping, that's fine. But when the child is waking up 3 to 4 times a night, it probably is also, they need help. But it also depends on the mom, I feel, a lot on the mom. For me, the first 2 years of my son's life, I didn't know better.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't know better, and I was coping very fine with him waking up. The second one came, and then I was not coping when she was waking up 2 more times, and I needed help. So that's also an important part, is to assess whether or not the mom is coping with waking up 2 times, or this is really a big problem for her, and it's not going to be just one answer or one answer to her question of like, just put the light off, or just, move the feed there. It needs a little bit more digging. Then she needs help, because that's a responsible way to do it. That's why often when I make videos and stuff like that, I don't tell people methods of how to do things, because what I say has power, and I can do a lot more harm than good. If I'm telling a mom, move 3 nights out of the room, but she's giving her child a liter of Coke before they go to bed, that child's going to scream for 3 hours. So I can do a lot more bad than what I do good. So we also need to be careful. And if what you're saying is going to do more bad than good, then rather refer to someone who knows what they're doing and is going to do it properly.
Okay.
That as well.
I like that. I mean, I've got my one or two things I tell them, and that I've kind of leaned off time or whatever. And if I'm not getting there, and I can, and as you say, it has a lot to do with the parent, because, and you can pick up. Look, maybe even it's just this parent is getting what I'm saying in the office, but I can see there's just so much more that's going to be necessary in that home environment for them to be able to explain this is what you need in the home environment here and there and what have you. Okay, we have a question in from Andre Mayer. How do we advise on confused day and night cycles? What would we say to those parents?
So the interesting thing about day and night cycles is the fact that babies are not born producing melatonin, and it's between 8 and 12 weeks that they start producing melatonin. And the biggest influence of melatonin is light and darkness. So, and generally between 8 and 12 weeks, that day-night confusion sorts itself out. Why? Not about something that we're doing, but by the fact that the baby is starting to produce melatonin, which actually regulates the circadian rhythm to change it. So before that time, the biggest way to manipulate a child's sleep is through feeding. So to change the day-night cycle is you have to ensure that the baby is getting an appropriate amount of feeds during the day so that they can stretch a little bit at night. So that's the only way to do it. You can put your child in a dark room and light during the day. It's going to have no impact because your baby doesn't have melatonin. So that doesn't have any kind of, the feeds are the important part. You shouldn't let the baby stretch for long stretches between feeds during the day, because then they're going to make up for it. And it's probably going to be at night.
You can't have it.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions?
Okay. Look, that's wonderful advice, because I mean, I come across that all the time. Where moms are saying, no, not that I can see, not that I can see at the moment. I was just saying now, I see. Oh, hang on. Here we go from Susan Gosling. Hi, Sue. No, lovely to have you on here. So Sue says you mentioned healthy naps. What's appropriate?
That's very age dependent, because the older a child gets, the less they need to sleep during the day. So with newborn babies, they need 6 to 8 hours of sleep during the day. From 3 months, they need less. So it really, you want to keep to age appropriate awake times as well as they. So as they get older, they can stay awake longer between sleeps as well. So newborns, lots of naps during the day. From 3 to 6, 7 months, it's between 3 and 4 naps that they're going to be. Generally, the closer they get to 6, 7 months, it's 3 naps. Then it moves to 2 naps a day. There will always be short naps as well. This is also something that people, when you talk about good naps, there will always be short naps with babies until they stop napping. There will always be short naps. I always say work on having one good nap, which is over an hour, but anything beyond that, any kind of short naps after that is fine. Your child is going to have short naps during the day, and that's also normal. Okay. I see there's a bit of other questions.
Wonderful.
No.
Yeah, so Andre is saying, well, baby falling asleep at the breast, is that fine? Is that something to avoid? Is that
So once again, when we're talking about newborns, a whole different story, because they don't have, once again, melatonin, they don't have the sleep cycle, so they in essence don't have the ability to fall asleep on their own. It's here from 12, 16 weeks when you want to start working on them falling asleep on their own. And the key to that change happens at bedtime. And you don't want your child to fall asleep anymore on the. That doesn't mean you're taking away the breast, you're just moving away. And when it's as young as 4 months, you're going to literally have your baby feeding. Just make sure they're not completely falling asleep, and then you're going to put them down. And then it becomes a little bit more, that gap between sleeping and when you're feeding becomes bigger and bigger and bigger the older they get. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
okay.
Great. So now we have Dave Payton here, who is, I know it says David Payton underneath my name here. I'm not Dave, I'm Mike, just using Dave's login. So I'm the imposter Dave Payton. So the actual Dave, who's sitting in the States at the moment, is asking, so when do night owl and early bird tendencies tend to manifest in babies? And should parents encourage these dispositions?
There's so much research about early birds and when it happens. I mean, there's definitely is something like early birds and night owls. There's no question about it. But once again, lots of research is also moving in the direction where it's something that is made. So if the parents are night owls, the chances of the baby turning out to be a night owl is a lot higher, because that's a routine and schedule that they're following. If the parents are fresh and happy and ready in the morning, the chances are pretty high that their children are going to be morning people. So there is not a normal kind of time where they are going to manifest, or a specific age where it is going to be. But I mean, even if I now think of my own children, they're 6 and 8. Or to be honest, I don't think they're either. My son, if you gave him the option, he would stay awake the entire night which is probably a night owl tendency, but he's also not lethargic or weird in the morning. So I can't even say at 8 that he has already kind of disposition. And I wouldn't necessarily encourage or discourage it, to be honest. If that's just the way your child is and they like to sleep, great. But if they're more of a, no. But it's like with anything, parenting as well, you're the parent in the end of the day. So with some things, we do need to put our foot down and
be the parent. Kind of steer the ship into the midline there.
Yeah.
Okay, I get you. Nice.
But they still get their 11 to 12 hours of needed sleep.
Okay, I like that. Right, so we've got Bhavni. Oh, Bhavni, I haven't seen you in ages. So nice to see you here on the chat. So Bhavni saying, what about babies who tend to awake when you put them down, but they sleep well when they're held? Is this something to be concerned about, or is it really baby needing some love and nothing to worry about?
Okay, once again, depending on the age of the baby. Newborns, you're going to hold them. They are used to being in your belly. They're not used to being unwrapped anymore. And with that type of things, also, this is a great tip that I give parents as well. Swaddling, obviously, for newborns is very important. Lots of parents tell me that kids don't like swaddling. If your child likes to be held, they like a swaddle, because that's a giant flesh swaddle. But it's the transfer that's important, is to remember to also put them down, feet first in their head, not like they're waking up. But when it comes to older children, once again, the key to change happens at bedtime. There is where you want your child to fall asleep on their own. So if you're rocking your baby to sleep at night, at bedtime, you can't expect them to not want it during the night. They are going to want it. So that's where you want it to happen, and then it's going to happen. No learning happens at 2 a.m. in the morning. Unless you're starting to be a chiropractor, maybe, or a ped. Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Rebecca, is there a way to wake a baby, or do you always leave them to
Yes,
that's like waking a husband.
Yes. Speaking of chiropractors and practice, here's our Playtime connection, Rebecca.
Okay.
Yes, let's go.
Okay. So I think there's a little bit of a delay.
Let's go. Let's jump into that one.
Okay. So a good way to wake a baby, you should never necessarily wake a baby. If you are going to wake a baby, because there is certain times where you do need a baby.
There is a little, but we're working on it. We're okay.
What do you call it? There is going to be, like, for instance, if you have to go to work and you have to first drop them off at school, of course, then you need to wake them up. Rather, don't just shake them awake. Just open up the curtains and let the light in, or put the light on, because it's like the sun, and that's the most natural way to wake up. The same with naps. Open up the curtains. But in general, I don't like waking babies. The only time is if it's necessary, like if you have to go to work, or if your last nap of the day is starting to cut into your bedtime. So you need to have a little bit of time before, depending on what age you are, but if it's, for an instance, an 8-month-old and they have a 3-hour wake time, if they are still sleeping by 4, rather wake them up so you can still get your 7 o'clock bedtime, if that makes sense. Okay. Right.
Wonderful. And then Iman, in newborn, should you wake them up to feed or let them wake up on their own when they are hungry?
There's lots of, obviously, are we now talking, there's a whole different answer to whether or not we're talking about daytime and nighttime. So let's start with daytime. First of all, during the day, yes. Even if it's just to feed your baby, you do not want to have too long stretches. And I'm talking about 2.5 to 3 hour stretches between feeds during the day, or else you're missing a feed. You want them to have at least 5 feeds in a 12-hour period. And if you're making those stretches too long, they're missing a feed, and they're going to make up for it at some point. So even if you're just feeding them and then putting them back to sleep again, that's fine, but just don't miss that feed. During the night, it's a different question. It does depend on the weight of your child. whether or not, and that this is something a ped or a clinic sister needs to advise to the parents, but it's something I always tell newborn moms as well, because moms, especially with preemies, for instance, then obviously the doctor told them they need to feed at night, which is normal and it's great. And you wouldn't change that. But then they kind of keep on that every 3-hour schedule beyond the time that is necessary. And then like a 12-week-old or 8-week-old where the baby's already gained more than the weight that they needed to, and then the mom's still waking the child up to feed. And then I'm like, you just need to talk to your ped again, because I'm pretty sure your baby doesn't need to be woken up anymore. Most nurses, the rule of thumb is over 3.7 kgs, then you don't need to wake the baby anymore. But it's also, if I prep an expectant mom or I speak to a newborn mom, I always say to an expectant mom, this is a question you need to ask the doctor before you leave the hospital. Ask them, is my baby an appropriate weight? Should I wake them up at night? Or do I have to or can I leave them? And if your baby's 4 kilos, probably they're going to tell you it's okay, your baby will wake up. It's also sometimes funny. I have laughed at expectant moms where they're like, do I have to wake my baby to feed? And I'm like, I think your baby's going to wake you to feed. Don't you worry.
Yeah, just hang around. You'll see. You'll see. Okay, we're going to take the last question now. Exactly, you'll see. The last question, we can put Andre and Bhavni's questions together because they both pertain to sleep training. Sleep training, is it a thing? Do we do it? And then, of course, then what age is appropriate to start with that? Let's finish off.
Okay, so I've technically already touched on this point already throughout this whole conversation. I just didn't call it sleep training. So often when people talk about sleep training, they think I'm going to tell them, leave your child in a room to cry until the next morning. I cannot charge money if that's what I did. That would be dumb. So when I talk about sleep training, I refer to methods of creating those positive sleep associations. Sleep associations that babies and children can use independently without their children. Some call it self-soothing and things like that. But the responsible way when you're doing sleep training, and that's a problem when parents attempt these things on their own, they read something on Google, oh, I just have to leave my baby and they're going to cry. And in all honesty, if you just leave your child and you have all the things in place, it could work. But most probably if you don't have it doesn't help you sleep train a child and you give them a liter of Coke before they go to bed, that baby's still not going to. You need to have all the things in place. And the appropriate time, a baby can do it anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks, but also age appropriately. Obviously, you're not going to leave a child to just cry when they're 3 months old. I've yet to meet the parent that would do that anyway. I would never say that to anyone. So you also need to, when you choose a method of sleep training, it needs to also be age appropriate. Cool. There's a lag.
It's okay. It's okay. Jolandi Becker, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. It's been fantastic. We are definitely having you back again, and we're definitely going to do more myth busting. I think it's been wonderful. I think I can especially tell you from the chiropractic side, these are things that we really, really like to get our teeth into so that we can utilize everyone else around and we can get the best outcome for our patients. And I'm sure that rings true for the physios and osteos and the lactation consultants and everyone that are on the network. So thank you very, very much for your time.
It was really great.
I am next time.
Definitely
cool.
Available to do this again. It's been really great. Thanks, Mike.
Wonderful. We will chat and we'll put it together. Cool. Thank you very much, Jolandi. Thank you guys on the network for being part of it tonight. It's all about you guys and it's all about spreading as much evidence-based info as we can. So thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon.